This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Monday, February 6th, and I thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. The Chiefs and the Eagles have landed in Arizona. The Super Bowl is this coming weekend, and I won't lie to you. I know that I have many, many Eagles friends and many, many Chiefs friends who are on edge. That's all they're thinking about right now. But no, I'm still thinking about the Chinese spy balloon. So for those of you that are not into football or not interested in that, yes. In fact, today's entire show is going to be dedicated to the Chinese spy balloon. We have great analysis coming up today from a couple of different gentlemen. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer, who I value a lot personally. He's been intimately involved in planning, strategic planning, military operations, and strategies in previous administrations, including the Trump administration. He knows Mark Milley, our current Joint Chiefs of Staff, so he gives perspective on this timeline of who was in charge, who was giving orders. Is this balloon thing, and they're alleging Trump, there were also balloons. What does he know about all this stuff? I trust Tony implicitly, so we'll get his take on it today. Also, a gentleman called Clay Novak, who I had the privilege of getting to meet. He authored a book late last year called Keep Moving, Keep Shooting. He graduated U.S. Army Ranger School. He's a master parachutist, retired U.S. Army Infantry Lieutenant Colonel, 25 years of service. And I said, look, I'd love to rely on you from time to time when military stories come up. I'm most interested in the timeline of this balloon story. A lot of you that listen in Kansas City and our KCMO listeners in Kansas City on Friday, it was crazy. The number of listeners that were calling into me live during the, 10 to noon Central Time hour on Friday actually could see this balloon. So it was visible to the naked eye, clearly able to be shot down. Now we know, could have been seen and shot down and dealt with before it even hit the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska. So it's an outrageous story. Of course, the Husk has the State of the Union tomorrow. There are a couple of different polls out. ABC News just came out with one it was after my radio show, but I can tell you now, that says 6 in 10 Americans don't think he's accomplished anything. Biden, that is. 6 in 10 Americans surveyed say don't think Biden has accomplished much, if anything, as president, which is correct. He hasn't. But some other devastating polling. Operation Clean Sweep is the order of the day. Just keep that in mind. We'll get into more of that in full detail in just a minute. But first, let me tell you about John Ruhlman, the guy who is the title sponsor of this show, that makes this show happen. And most of all, in this god-awful inflation that we're living through right now, if you're trying to save money, one of the fastest ways you can do it is to call John Ruhlman or log on to usmedicalplan.com, usmedicalplan.com, and see if the health insurance premium that you're paying is too expensive. If you buy health insurance, a supplemental plan because you're retired, you're on Medicare, if you buy your own health insurance as a small business, if you buy your own health insurance as a family, you have to cover the kids, you and your spouse, maybe you're paying a boatload, thousands a month. I have friends that have reached out in my previous relationship with the gentleman that was working with John, and who was a previous sponsor of this show. John now handles all the insurance business for this show. And I was blown away at a friend of mine who said, Chris, I got better coverage for my daughter who has some special health needs and the rest of my family. I got better coverage and I saved $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month saved. Now listen, if you're paying a few thousand, several hundred, whatever for health insurance premiums, you're probably paying way too much. John Ruhlman at usmedicalplan.com has access to 80 different health insurers out there. So he can find you better coverage, maybe some that's not so expansive. You don't, if you're a guy, if you're a single guy or you're just insuring men or you yourself, you don't need pregnancy insurance and mammograms and all that stuff that the women do need, right? So there are options is my point. There's a veritable buffet of menu choices for you to choose from when it comes to health insurance. And John also handles Affordable Care Act stuff, Obamacare stuff, if that's the route you want to go. And they have a great care department. I just want you to reach out to John Ruhlman. Look for my smiling mug at usmedicalplan.com. You're not on the right side if you don't see my picture. usmedicalplan.com, or call John today at 877-410-4321. Please mention you heard about this on the show when you call. He's been fantastic to work with. I know he's going to take great care of you. He's a family business of 18 years. He, his brother, and his wife. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. Trust nothing you're hearing from mainstream media. It's why you're here, and I'm glad you are, because we've got, listen fast. We have a lot to cover today, folks. This balloon story is the most unbelievable, and I know when I say that in this era of gaslighting, that's a high bar to say something is the most unbelievable thing I've ever heard. But just when I think the American left and the mainstream press, Democrats, this phony administration, we're pretending the Incredible Husk is president, just when I think they have set an all-time new incredulity level with me, they surpass it, and the balloon story has done it. This is... There is so much to unpack here. I've been champing. If I could do a weekend show, I'd have done it. They didn't give me the real estate to do it. I wanted to come back in this weekend to talk with you about it, but here we are. First of all, Operation Clean Sweep. Do not forget, always remember, in everything that we watch going forward, it is all about one objective, and that is getting rid of Joe Biden now. His usefulness, the Incredible Husk's usefulness is up. Remember why he was useful and why he was used. He was used as a sales pitch to the American public after Trump to restore normalcy. Grandpa was going to come in and make everybody feel good about the way things used to be because he's been in government since magma cooled. Everybody knows the Bidens. He rides the rails. He's Mr. Normal. Okay, so he was useful. He was never in charge. It was always a lie, and we all know it, and so do Democrats, and so does everybody else, so his usefulness is up. His shelf life is up. He's objectively bad at communicating. He can't even fake it well. He doesn't even look like he's in control. This balloon event has, if the document thing didn't do it, this balloon event did. So remember, it is always first about delegitimizing the Husk, running him down, grinding him into a political pulp from which he cannot return. So always remember when we talk about everything, that's first what is most important to establishment Washington and the Democrat Party. Thanks, Joe. This is where your old bones get off. Okay? So just remember that. How do I know I continue to be right about Operation Clean Sweep? Because on the morning after a weekend of disaster related to this Chinese balloon thing, really more than a week, more than 7 days, the balloon story has been a thing. But now the thing's been shot down, right? So it shot down Saturday, or whenever they shot it down. I lost. I guess it was Saturday over the coast of Charlotte, North Carolina, when they finally shot it down. A full 7-8 days after they discovered it starting to float into U.S. territory over the Aleutian Islands of Alaska. So just keep in mind, as I know you know, this balloon entered U.S. airspace over the Aleutian Islands. That's a little chain of islands that strings off of Alaska. They knew for days before it even entered airspace. It's flying over water. That's a fairly sizable body of water up there. It floated over that, over the Aleutian Islands, over Alaska, all the way down through Canada, through Montana, across the Midwest, and continued south until it exited off the coast of the Carolinas, and that's when they decided to shoot it down, supposedly. And we'll get into the timeline of all of it in just a minute. So it's been over a calendar week we've been watching the balloon. And now that it's been shot down, the Associated Press rolls out with this today. A majority of Democrats now think one term is plenty for Joe Biden. Despite his insistence, he plans to seek re-election in 2024. According to a new poll from the Associated Press, just 37% of Democrats say they want him to seek a second term. That's down from 52% in the weeks before last year's midterm elections. When Biden has trumpeted his... Now, folks, this poll was released today. Do you know what tomorrow is? Tomorrow is the Husk's State of the Union address. Are you telling me the Incredible Husk is going to go before the nation and say, the state of our union is sound? The hell it is. We just had a Chinese spy balloon hover over the continent for 7 days. The economy's in a shambles. People are finding documents classified in your house you're using as coasters and setting in the garage every other day. The Chinese own our ass. What are you going to say tomorrow? The State of the Union is dandy. Jim Dandy. I tell you what, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is giving the Republican response to this. I would love to be in the room with her today. I wish I could sit down with Sarah Huckabee Sanders just to watch the speech prep. Because this is just chock-a-block full of opportunity to take this guy. I mean, he does it himself. It's actually going to be one of the easiest speeches and assignments ever. No disrespect to Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sarah Overman, age 37, Democrat, works in Raleigh, North Carolina. We could use someone younger in office. I honestly think he's too old. The new AP poll suggests relatively few U.S. adults give him high marks on anything related to age, related to performance, related to ability to govern, related to legislative victories. He wins on none of it. Again, this is the AP poll of Democrats. Follow-up interviews with poll respondents suggest many believe the 80-year-old's age is a liability, with people focused on his coughing, his gait. You know what that means, his gait? G-A-I-T. You ever watched the Husk walk across the lawn? I know we're not supposed to say this. It sounds ageist. Listen, folks, I love elderly people. I do. I have a soft spot in my heart. I know a lot of people pour their heart and time into charities for kids. You know who I feel the most compassion for? I just do. The elderly. Like when I volunteered with my church, I go visit the old folks. A lot of people don't like that. It's hard to watch old people age and deteriorate. Sometimes it's even intimidating. I mean, I remember as a little kid, and I can thank my grandmother for this. She used to take me to visit who was my great-grandmother. And I was, as a little kid, I was really scared. My grandmother taught me and talked to me about why old people aren't scary. And I don't know, I kind of grew up feeling a soft spot for old folks. They're lonely, they're locked away in a home. So, I'm not an ageist, okay? I'm not making fun of elderly people for the sake of it. But again, I go visit people in nursing home and play games with them or bring them Christmas cards. I don't elect them president of the United States. Okay? I have a lot of compassion for it. So when you hear Democrats say they're concerned about things like his coughing, his gait, that means how he walks. And if you've ever watched him walking across the lawn to Marine One, he has this weird, high-stepping, stiff, don't fall, oh, please don't fall look. Again, it's like your grandfather walking across the living room to get to the table for Thanksgiving. Everybody kind of, easy, Grandpa, because one false move and, he's in hospice. They're concerned about his gaffes and the possibility that the world's most stressful job would be better suited for someone younger. I think what we have discovered in this balloon story, once and for all, not that it was ever a surprise to you and me, but this is now abundantly clear and maybe the most alarming evidence to date. This is not a man running anything. He's not in charge of anything. How do we know? We know because of what the military officials, what Mark Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and military brass have said about his role in this. I'm trying to figure out who's running the country because it's not him. So who is it? Is it Mark Milley? Is it the Defense Department? Is this officially a shadow government? It has to be. Jennifer Griffin of Fox News, she is their national security correspondent. She reported on Thursday of last week. Thursday. I went back and I looked at this morning just to make sure I got this right. And you can check her tweets if you don't believe me. Jennifer Griffin on Thursday of last week reported Joe Biden did not, per her Pentagon sources, Joe Biden did not order that balloon shot down out of the sky. Did not. On Saturday, the Husk said that he gave orders to shoot that balloon down on Wednesday. Follow? I just want to make sure we're clear on the timeline here. Biden claims he ordered the balloon shot down on Wednesday, and he said, whenever it's most safe. I said, shut. And he made a very specific point on Saturday. He took no other questions but on the timeline. The Biden administration's in a mess because they don't know how to get on the same page here. They've got real problems. We haven't even gotten into the Trump stuff yet, and I'm going to get there. They're all over the map. Who ordered the balloon shot down? When was the balloon discovered? Who told them about the balloon? You know how Obama used to say, I found out about it just like you did. It used to infuriate me. Obama used to say that all the time. I heard about it just like you. He was always amazed at all the news that was breaking around him all the time. The president of the United States never knew. I was as shocked as you were. I read about it in the Washington Post. I saw it on cable news when I woke up, just like you. I never believed that with him. With Biden, I do. In fact, I believe most of the people in the Biden White House, well, Biden, Jill, that idiotic press secretary, these people know nothing. They know they're on a need-to-know basis. You ever been told that? You're on a need-to-know basis? We'll let you know when we think you need to be brought into this. Otherwise, you just mind your business, have some pudding, turn on some Matlock, and shut up. We'll tell you what you need to know when you need to speak. Got it? Scoot along. All right, can I go to Delaware? Wherever. We don't care where you go. Just get the hell out of here. So Susan Rice, maybe Ron Klain, who the hell else knows? Obama's core group. They know this stuff. Biden knows nothing. So when was he told about this balloon? I bet he wasn't. You know what I bet? I bet when people started looking up in the sky, and I'm not kidding, when this made Montana airspace last week, and people start looking up and they're, what the hell is that? And the news starts picking up on it. It wasn't until like Tuesday or Wednesday that cable news starts reporting, what's going on? What is that giant, big, white floating thing? By Wednesday, all the cables, there's a big round thing floating over the U.S. What the hell is that, everybody? What is that? What is that? It was 60,000 feet in the air. Nobody could get a good, clean look. Cameras are zooming in on it. And that's when the Pentagon had to come out first and say, we're fairly confident it's a Chinese spy vessel. What? A Chinese spy vessel? How long has it been up there? It flew into airspace a few days ago in Aleutian Islands, Alaska, and made its way across Canada and down into Montana now, and now you people are noticing it, and damn it, was basically the Pentagon's official. We were really hoping we were going to get away with this. You people look it up in the sky, and you saw the damn thing. So, yeah, okay, you got us. It's a Chinese spy balloon. Naturally, the next question all of us had is, what do you intend to do about it? Does the Incredible Husk, the guy we're pretending to be president, know about it? He didn't say anything. The White House didn't say a word, folks. The only people that spoke about this last week was the Pentagon, the military people. And when press started saying, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to shoot it down? Nope. Debris field. Too concerned about the debris field. What? Montana? It was flying over Alaska and a lot of unsettled Canada and a lot of Montana. Debris field? It didn't even make sense. worried about the debris field crashing down on somebody here in the United States, so no, we're not going to shoot it down. Okay. Well, can we know the route of the balloon? What's going on with the balloon? And that's when the Pentagon decided to get snarky. And I don't know which guy they sent out, but he was Snarky McSnarkerson, and he came out and he said, well, that's classified. And a member of the media said, classified? Like, it's a Chinese spy balloon flying over our country. What do you mean we can't know what the hell's going on? To which Snarky McSnarkerson of the Pentagon said, well, I mean, you certainly can look up in the air and see where it's going if you really want to. Oh, that's helpful. Well, now that this has gone on for a few days and the Pentagon doesn't seem to be terribly interested in doing anything about this, naturally the question becomes, where is the guy we're pretending to be president? Shouldn't he know about this? What does he have to say about it? As of Friday, the Husk wouldn't take a single question about it. Friday and into the weekend, he gave a big speech on the economy. He tried to have a big rally in Philadelphia with the Democrat loyal. They tried to ignore this. But on Saturday, while he's in on the tarmac, in transit, he finally comes out and he said, I gave orders to shoot that down on Wednesday. You gave orders to shoot it down on Wednesday? Okay, because members of the media have been reporting all week that you didn't give orders to do anything. Like, you wouldn't answer questions. And clearly nobody even seems to think you even knew about it. Or if you did, you weren't clear you wanted it shot down. No, I said shoot it down. Damn straight I did. Pentagon refutes that. The Defense Department says he didn't. He says he did. Who do you believe? There's only one answer here, and either answer isn't good. And it is that the man we're pretending to be president is lying, or the commander-in-chief is not the commander-in-chief, and the Pentagon did what it damn well pleased and ignored him, and then shot it down on their own timetable. Which, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how else to say this, means we're smack in the middle of a coup. There's no other way to put it. We apparently have a Defense Department that just does whatever it wants, and we have a non-existent commander-in-chief or one that is so lacking in authority or control that they can just ignore him and do what they please. Either answer isn't good, but one of those answers is true. He did give an order to shoot it down in the middle of the week, and they ignored him. He says, I told him to shoot it down when it was safe. And, of course, the military's assessment was it wasn't safe until it got over water. You know, there were a few leftists actually trying to defend this by saying, what are you trying to start, World War III? You shoot that down, you're going to make the Chinese mad. What are you talking about? Can you imagine if we tried to fly a surveillance vehicle over China today? You think the Chinese would be playing patty cake? You think Xi and his military would be sitting around going, I don't know, debris field, and maybe would it make the U.S. mad if we shot it down? I mean, they said it's just a weather balloon. Maybe we should just let it float over China until it gets to the ocean. Just give it a few days, maybe? Right. The Chinese would blow that thing out of the sky, and they wouldn't care if a whole city was wiped out in doing so. They'd do it to make the point. You don't F with us. You don't send a balloon over our airspace. We actually had to have a discussion about it. It's humiliating. But the pièce de résistance of the weekend, folks. And this is where I nearly fell out of my seat watching this. I couldn't wait to get back here. When all else fails, when you have an absolute political PR disaster on your hand, when the Pentagon has been caught inactive and ineffectual at best, and we have a commander-in-chief who's clearly at best asleep at the switch, at worst being completely ignored, what do? They play the Trump card. Yes, because what would any controversy for Joe Biden be and Democrats be without saying, Trump did it too? Bald-faced lying. Absolutely bald-faced lying. Byron York has been tweeting about this, and his tweets over the last 8 hours or so I wanted to share with you because before I get into this portion of it. Here's his thread from Twitter. Chinese spy balloon story getting more troubling tonight as the Wall Street Journal and others are reporting that, this is from last night, Wall Street Journal and others reporting the Biden administration now says earlier Trump-era Chinese balloon incursions happened, but nobody in the United States government knew about them at the time. So, yeah, some unknown, off-the-record Pentagon guy goes out in a whisper campaign over the weekend and says, hey, there were spy balloons during Trump, too. Now, remember, does this sound familiar? Think documents. Biden had documents, Trump had documents, Pence had documents. Operation Clean Sweep. I go back to where I started. Remember what we're trying to achieve. Exit the husk and make sure at the same time guys like Donald Trump don't return. It's a twofer. Oh, yeah, Trump had balloons, too. There were balloons. Sure, there were balloons. Oh, sure. Trump knew all about balloons. Well, naturally, Trump issues a statement of sorts on social media. But the entire team, it wasn't just Trump. Pompeo was out there. Grenell was out there. Ratcliffe was out there, guys that were acting in national intelligence. Now, look, if Pompeo is out there saying this would never happen in a Trump administration, and Pompeo is ostensibly going to be running, he's not exactly tight with Trump today. Everyone in Team Trump came out and totally refuted this whisper campaign that there were balloons during the era of Trump. Didn't happen. Well, now, here's what's really getting interesting. If the reporting is accurate, and again, Byron is pointing this out from the Wall Street Journal, reporting the Biden administration now says Trump-era Chinese balloon incursions that the Pentagon, or this source, is whispering and claiming, nobody in the United States government knew about them at the time. Huh? So for that to be true, one has to believe that the United States government missed these huge balloons over the United States. Did that really happen? It seems hard to believe. Or did the military spot them and not inform civilian leadership? That seems harder to believe. And then there's a final question. The Washington Post reporting this morning that the Trump-era balloons came near the United States, but they're not clear they entered United States airspace. What's going on here? I have a lot of questions. More questions than answers for sure. And with the Husk having a State of the Union tomorrow, let's go over a few of them. Mr. President, are you still claiming now that the Chinese spy balloon, what time and what date were you informed of this Chinese spy balloon? When? What day? When did you learn about it? Did you order that Chinese spy balloon shot down? On Saturday, he says, yeah, damn straight, I ordered it shot down when it was safe. Okay, he claims it was Wednesday that he ordered that shot down. On Thursday, the Pentagon tells Jennifer Griffin he did not. So what's the conflict in reporting here? Who did you give that order, Mr. President, to shoot the spy balloon down? Who did you give the order to? If you did issue that order, what time? What day? Was the order carried out in a timely fashion? If so, why did you wait until the Chinese balloon had completed flying over the continental United States? Why didn't you shoot it down before it was in our territorial waters over United States land? And while we're at it, why have you left the southern border unprotected and wide open? This is all ahead of his State of the Union, so I may as well throw it all in there. Do you have an estimate on how much fentanyl comes across our southern border every week? How many Americans have been killed by fentanyl flowing across the southern border? How about COVID boosters and fentanyl? What's responsible for all of these sudden deaths? Why hasn't the FBI searched Barack Obama's multiple properties? Just out of curiosity. These are questions I'd ask him. Are you still claiming now that the election is over that Hunter Biden laptop story is Russian disinformation? Are you willing to resign and lose all government pension and payments? Former presidents are entitled to if it can be proven that you received even $1 from your son or brother's business dealings. These are questions I would love to ask. The Incredible Husk is compromised. Period, full stop. There's no other way to see it. He's even sung about it. Jill and I in an ice cream shop. Where the hell am I? I forgot. The FBI showed up at dawn, collecting documents one by one. Back in D.C., the Pentagon software flashed a message. Something's out there, floating in the Midwest sky. Don't worry about it. It's just a red Chinese spy balloon floating by.
The Pentagon had said that it is a Chinese high-altitude surveillance balloon traveling above commercial air traffic and not presenting a military or a physical threat. Word got out when someone spotted it from the ground in Montana on Wednesday. It was confirmed late yesterday. Apparently, the U.S., has been tracking it for a few days as it made its way up from China across the mostly Alaskan Aleutian Islands, down along the western coast of Canada to the U.S. Northwest. Home, it must be noted, to several U.S. military bases, including ICBM missile sites, and apparently, that is why the U.S. considered nixed the idea of shooting it down.
Red Chinese spy balloons floating in the Midwest sky. Panic bells, it's red alert. That's on cable news. My mind's somewhere else. I just finished a tasty bowl of life. Wear my Ray-Bans to cover my eyes. I'm too squinty to see the sky. Red Chinese spy balloons are floating by.
We have detected and we're tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon that remains over the continental United States. We continue to track and monitor the balloon closely.
In Delaware, I'm on Easy Street. Let what's their names discuss and meet. I'm not worried, just mostly blurry. You know who's a looker? That Anne Murray. This is what she paid me for. It's how Hunter paid for crack and whores. I'm the president. Everything's fine. The Red Chinese paid me to let them spy.
And that the PRC's decision to take this action on the eve of my planned visit is detrimental to the substantive discussions that we were prepared to have.
What we're not going to do is get into a hour-by-hour location of the balloon. Again, we're monitoring it closely. As I mentioned, right now it's over the center of the continental United States. That's about as specific as I'm going to get.
But I understand it might be inconvenient, but does the public not have a right to know?
The public certainly has the ability to look up in the sky and see where the balloon is.
They say I should shoot it out of the air with our super high-tech jet fighters. Let's just watch some TV land. Maybe some Matlock or Captain Kirk. Call that Admiral Rachel guy or however the hell he identifies. It'll soon float out of U.S. skies. Just let the Red Chinese spy balloon float by.
We concluded that conditions were not conducive for a constructive visit at this time.
Would you just let the Red Chinese spy balloon float by? It's fine. It'll be just fine.
If you want to ask me a question about the economy, but I'm not going to answer any question about anything else. Thank you.
99 bribes I have bagged. This is why there's spy balloons. When this is over, I'm sitting pretty with Hunter, Jill, and my brother Jimmy. Hunter's laptop is a souvenir. It proves the Chinese own my rear. So here they are with their spy balloon. It's my nap time. I better go. Official Joe Biden song on the spy balloon. We have this fully covered at Easy. Rocky Road. Yeah. Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental. He is my dentist. He's a great friend. He's an Eagles fan, so I won't hold that against him. Just kidding. He's just one of the best. He really is one of my dearest friends. He was the very first sponsor that I ever had when I started in Philadelphia radio, and he continues to be. He was the very first sponsor of this podcast and continues to proudly partner with me, and I'm always honored and proud to send patients his way because every time I send someone new, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's a colleague, every single time a member of this audience goes, I will get a note inevitably that says, you were right. I can't believe I put this off for so long. He was tremendous. He was delicate. He was easy to work with. He was so friendly. People send Bob gifts. I mean, look, I wouldn't be one of my best friends, Bob, and his wife, Deb, and their daughters. I wouldn't be friends with them. We wouldn't have spent time in their vacation house down the shore. We wouldn't have done those things if Bob hurt me or was a bad guy. He's the opposite. He's one of the best people you'll ever meet. His daughter now works with him. I mean, she went through dental school and now works alongside him. He made such an impression on her. So that speaks to the quality of character and the kind of people they are at Williamsburg Dental, the whole team. Your time will be respected. Your comfort will be respected. They listen. So don't put off needed dental work. And if you want an overhaul of your smile, want a white, perfect, bright-looking smile, he's a top cosmetic dentist, and that's voted on by his peers every single year in the Philadelphia region. He's worth traveling to, seriously. If you're going to invest in it, make it count. 610-353-2700. He's in Broomall, Pennsylvania, just off the Blue Route in Philadelphia. 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com. As I said, my incredulity level at this balloon story is so high that I wanted to call on people that I trust to give me their analysis from a military and or intelligence perspective. So I loaded up the show today with people who I have been around a little bit. They've seen some things. They know people. If they don't know themselves, the answer. And I'm sure they've thought more than a little bit about it over the last several days. So Clay Novak, who's become a recent friend of the show, author of the novel Keep Moving, Keep Shooting, learned that he's a Army Ranger School graduate. He's a master parachutist. He's been awarded the Bronze Star 3 times for his service in combat. So he's a guy that after we talked with him, I said, look, I want to have you back more regularly when things pop up. And this seems to be just as strong a case as any to reach out to somebody of this caliber to get his perspective. Not that he necessarily is on the ground and intimately knows details, but I think as a veteran of distinguished service, he can look at this analytically and tell us what he thinks passes the smell test and what he doesn't. So, Mr. Novak, welcome back to the show, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
I'm well, and I'm very confused. And because you're a sober-minded guy who's served your country with honor, I hope you can bring me some clarity today, at least as you see it.
That, with this situation, I don't think is a very easy task, Chris, to be honest with you.
Now, let me just ask you as a guy who has served, and you know the chain of command well. And chain of command, at least I thought, used to matter a lot in the United States military. Jennifer Griffin says that the Department of Defense reported to her on Thursday of last week, no, Biden did not order this balloon shot down. Biden said on Saturday that as early as Wednesday of last week, that would be a day before Jennifer's reporting, that he did order that balloon shot down, but when it was safe to do so, or something like that. Now, I think before we go any further, isn't it imperative to understand who called for this balloon to be shot down and when? Isn't that important? And I'll add on, Clay, if the president ordered this shot down by a date certain and the military didn't do it, that is the Defense Department, I don't know, Milley, whoever you want to call that, that's disconcerting because the president gets to call those shots, doesn't he? So that's a lot. Take it away.
So I think the question on the chain of command is important because you're talking about American airspace and really over the continental United States, and not just the lower 48. Because if you look at the flight path of the balloon, it came in over Alaska, and then over Canada for a few days, and then into the lower 48, spanning Montana, Nebraska, Missouri, and then across over to South Carolina, where it was eventually shot down. So if anything is going to happen militarily over the United States, then yes, that's the president's call. And he has to take responsibility for that. Interestingly enough, the yes, he did, no, he didn't. Unfortunately, Chris, I think it's very consistent with the inconsistency of communication is very consistent with this administration. You know that. I know that. Every time we hear from them, it's a different story or somebody's circling back to readdress something later. And none of it is very, very clear. As far as the interaction with the Department of Defense, we do use something called commander's intent very, very often, where you've got What you don't have is a boss, and in this case, it's the president telling the Department of Defense specifically, I want you to do this at this time, and I want you to do this in this very specific way. Commander's intent is more of a general guidance. Listen, this thing needs to be shot down, and I want you to do it safely. General Milley, Secretary Austin, take it away. Now, when he gives that type of guidance, the defense structure owes him repeated and consistent updates on where the operation is going. So if they decided collectively, well, we're going to wait until it's over a body of water, they owe him that. They owe him that as a discussion point, consistently. If I was the president, and I would imagine you as well, Chris, you're getting updates on this balloon 6, 7, 8, 10 times a day, where it is, what it's doing, what we know about it, et cetera. And the first question he's got to ask is, why are we waiting this long? And they would have to have an answer. Now, I've heard a bunch of different reports. Hey, we want to wait until it's over a safe area. They decided to wait until it's over water. I don't know if you've looked at the flight path, Chris, and I know, you've spent a lot of time in the Midwest, and so have I, but there's plenty of open space in Western Canada, Montana, Western and Central Nebraska, where they could have put this thing down safely, with very, very limited risk to, personal injury or destruction of property. That would have made it a heck of a lot easier to recover than, what's going on now with Navy divers, Coast Guard ships off the coast of South Carolina in 50 feet of water that's, below 50 degrees, trying to, pull as many pieces of this thing out of the ocean as they possibly can.
Clay Novak with us again. He's a retired United States Army Infantry Lieutenant Colonel, 25 years of service. So you've been around. You know some stuff is the point. That's why we brought you in. I cannot fathom. And what you said off the top is the most unfathomable part. General Keane said this over the weekend on Fox. We know this stuff's in the air well before it gets to the Aleutian Islands, don't we? Never mind Montana. I mean, we know, don't we?
We do. It's not uncommon, and it's been happening, repeatedly over the last 60, 70 years with the Soviets, and then obviously now the Russians. They'll, especially up by Alaska, they'll test international airspace. There's been, multiple occasions where bombers will have crossed into U.S. airspace and they get escorted back out by U.S. fighters. We know these things are up there. We have the, radar capability. We know when things enter our airspace. It's not a surprise, especially up there.
The thing is, I'm not stupid about the balloon. It's not like the greatest threat that ever, was posed to the United States is a balloon. People have been making the great point all week. We're walking around with TikTok on our phones. So I get it. It's not the balloon is not the threat to me. It's the symbolism of it, Clay. What that represented to me was, so the Chinese can just literally float over the entirety of the continental United States and we're not going to do anything about it. It was like the biggest middle finger I've ever seen. That's what it symbolized to me. And,
Chris, I agree with you. And unfortunately, that specific thing was acknowledged by Secretary Austin. He acknowledged, I read a quote that it was, a violation of our sovereignty. Yeah, it was. And we just let it go. We let it happen. And not only us, but Canada did the same thing. And you have to wonder, not that we have a lot of faith, necessarily in that administration, but, what was their thinking? Did we call them and say, hey, we're going to let this go. We're going to collect some intelligence on it. We're going to surveil it. We're going to do whatever. And Canada just abided by it. Or did they just sit idly by as well and do nothing? But really, Chris, the people that need to be worried right now, based on our reaction, are the folks in Taiwan. I mean, we've pledged to protect them internationally from any Chinese incursion, et cetera, and we literally just let the Chinese fly a balloon into our own airspace, let alone theirs.
Wow. Yeah, that's it must be very unsettling to people that are counting on our strength, Clay Novak. What of this report, this leak, some whisper campaign from some insider as yet to be named, there were a bunch of balloons when Trump was president, too. 3. Well, Trump refutes this. Pompeo over the weekend said, I guarantee we'd have blown the thing out of the sky. Grinnell has denied it. Ratcliffe has denied it. DNI guys, they were like, that never happened. Now reporting seems to suggest that maybe it did happen. Maybe it got close. But the reporting now seems to be, if it did happen, the Trump administration wasn't informed at all, which is more disconcerting if true. It feels like we keep getting reports now that the Department of Defense knows stuff they're just not sharing up the chain. And does that bug you if so?
Yeah, I saw the same thing, Chris. And it was, I love the, unnamed intelligence official, the I don't want to tell anybody who I am kind of thing. But yeah, so it was, yes, this happened 3 times. They were previously undetected, but now suddenly we know about them. Previously undetected, but oh, by the way, they were over Texas and Florida. Previously undetected. I don't have this picture in my mind of somebody hitting a rewind button on satellite footage or radar footage, to go back in time to see if this happened before. Possible, not likely. But yeah, no, your point is exactly right. If this did happen, where in the information chain was it stopped before it got to the White House? And who thought that they had the authority to not tell the president at the time, President Trump, that this was going on, if it is in fact true? And that's a very, very, unsettling thought that someone in the chain of command, whether it's in the intelligence community or the defense community or combined together, God forbid, decided that President Trump didn't need to know about this, or that the director of the CIA didn't need to know about this, or the DNI, whoever. Where at that point, where did that stop? Who made that executive decision to not tell the White House that this was happening? That is scary if it is in fact true.
It is scary. And Mark Milley, all roads seem to keep going back to the Joint Chiefs Chair, Mark Milley, who has made public comments before that he thinks Trump is, like a hair trigger temper guy, and has even said, hey, look, there were times I was going to be willing to hop on the phone with China and let him know that Trump's about to lose it on you, like give him a heads up kind of a thing. I mean, Milley seems like a really bad guy who clearly didn't like his boss, the commander-in-chief, Donald Trump. And so it seems consistent with that line of thinking where he's been public that I could almost hear it. I'm not going to tell Trump about these balloons. He could lose it and cause an international episode. Let's just keep it from him. I could almost hear it.
Well, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. Throughout my career, I did have some interactions with General Milley at various stages. He's an interesting personality, to put things lightly. But what he and all general officers,
Clay, if I'm sorry to interrupt you. If I'm being unfair to him and you have a different characterization, please share it.
I don't think you are.
Okay.
I don't think you are, Chris, truthfully. And it's a position of power. And the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, all of the chiefs of staff of the various services, they're in an advisory role. That is their job. And the collective Joint Chiefs are there to advise the president and the cabinet and the secretaries, across the board. That is their job. They're there to provide military expertise, courses of action when required, and advise on decisions to be made. That's their job. They don't necessarily get the latitude to say, I don't think we're going to tell the president about this one, or I don't think he can handle that decision. The American public elects the president, and that's the way it works. That's how the chain of command works, and you don't get to just arbitrarily keep things from the president because you think he can't handle it. It's not your job, and it's not your position.
So I'll just ask you, just your gut. And I mean, I know you don't necessarily know anything more than we do. You're just watching, but you've been inside. So what does your gut tell you happened ultimately? Really, how do you read this? Is this an ineffectual president who's just kind of deferred to a Department of Defense to do what they think best? Or is this the Department of Defense acting unilaterally and ignoring this president, or keeping him and the previous president in the dark, which is even more I'm not sure which alarms me more. They're both bad, but I think one of them has to be true.
I think it's, truthfully, Chris, I think it's somewhere in the middle. So, you've got a president who, literally has spent his entire adult life in Washington, D.C., has no military experience, no actual application, and really is relying upon the DOD to do those kinds of things for him. And truthfully, President Trump was much the same way, right? No military experience in his background. And of course, they have to rely upon the Department of Defense to provide them information, to help them make decisions, to bridge those gaps for them, and really become the violent arm of politics where required. But I think that somewhere along the way, and I'm not particularly sure when it happened, but I would guess it's somewhere during the global war on terror, those 20 years that we spent in Afghanistan and Iraq, that there's become a disconnect between daily operations in the military, what we did, and what we're responsible for, and what the White House's role is in all of that. I think the 20 years of fighting with multiple 4-stars growing up, fighting that war, and getting to positions of power where they don't answer on a daily basis for everything that they do. But I think there's a disconnect that's grown over those 20 years between the Pentagon and the White House over multiple administrations.
And finally, scale of 1 to 10, just quickly, Clay, how disconcerting is this balloon to you? I mean, really, seriously, like, what, as a guy who's served his country with distinction most of your career, how bothersome is this balloon event? It's
the length of time that bothers me the most, Chris. And I think, 7 days, there's a whole bunch of questions to be asked about this balloon. What was it doing? Why was it here? Why a balloon, not a satellite? What was it collecting on? It's obviously an intelligence asset. And what's disconcerting to me most, Chris, is that no one's going to tell us anything.
Yeah.
After they pick all the pieces up out of the ocean, we as the American public are not going to get one single bit of information that tells us truthfully what that balloon was doing, why it was here, and what information was unfortunately, broadcast or sent back to China while it was.
And this guy has a State of the Union tomorrow.
We're not going to know.
He has a State of the Union tomorrow, Clay.
He's not going to tell us, Chris. No. He's not going to tell us anything.
Sir, I appreciate you waking early this morning to give us your perspective. I value it deeply, so thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on, Chris, and this is not early.
Okay, no, for you, of course it's not. What am I talking about? This is piker stuff for you.
Yeah, for sure.
The book, by the way, Keep Moving, Keep Shooting. Clay Novak, you retired U.S. Army Infantry Lieutenant Colonel. Sir, thank you for your time and your service today. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Chris.
I had another brilliant night's sleep. MyPillow.com to make it happen for you, too. That's where you go today. MyPillow.com or call 800-932-5056. So I might have told you a couple of weeks ago, one of my producers, I sent him some MyPillow slippers. Loved them. He said, Chris, I just ordered the wrong size. I need to size up. I said, okay. Give 800-932-5056 a call. He did, and he wrote me back, and I'm not making this up. He said, that was the most exceptional customer service I've ever had. He said, please tell your audience how great they are to call and work with over the phone. So that's MyPillow.com or 800-932-5056. And here's the thing. When you're ordering MyPillow products, and those run the gamut. I'm drinking My Coffee from Mike. He has his own coffee line now. My Coffee. It's delicious. He sent me a bag. I slept like a baby on the Giza Dream sheets. I had a full body pillow, which I now, when I'm a side sleeper, I tuck in between my knees. Great added support. And I'm on a MyPillow to boot while I'm sleeping. It is the best. Even Dean, my dog Dean, is in on the action with a MyPillow dog bed. The kids have MyPillow pillows. I got my entire team pillows and or Giza Dream sheets, and like I said, some slippers. So we're now an official My Pillow show, and I hope that if you want to take great care of yourself and spoil yourself, you do it with My Pillow products. Mike's a great guy. These products are outstanding. MyPillow.com. Use my name, Chris Podcast. Chris Podcast. That's how you save up to 66% on everything you order. Chris Podcast. All right? And you can call 800-932-5056. Either way, just use Chris Podcast to save big. MyPillow.com.
On Wednesday, when I was briefed on the balloon, I ordered the Pentagon to shoot it down on Wednesday as soon as possible. They decided, without doing damage to anyone on the ground, they decided that the best time to do that was as it got over water outside within the 12-mile limit. They successfully took it down, and I want to compliment our aviators who did it, and we'll have more to report on this a little later. Thank you.
Mr. President, what did you say about China? What's your message to China?
You were saying the recommendation was from your national security.
I told them to shoot it down.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
But the recommendation
They said to me, let's wait till the safest place to do it.
What does this mean for China, relations with China?
Okay. Now, that's fine, except Jennifer Griffin from Fox News reported on Thursday, U.S. defense officials tell Fox President Biden did not order military to shoot down the Chinese spy balloon. Did not order the military to shoot down the Chinese spy balloon in order to avoid potential civilian casualties on the ground. Now that matters. And there is a distinction. Don't give me that, well, he wanted to avoid casualties. He wanted to avoid damage. No, did you order the balloon shot down or not? This matters. I said shoot it down on Wednesday. Jennifer Griffin says the Pentagon says he did not order anything shot down, safely or otherwise. He didn't order anything. Mayor Pete was trotted out on cable news to try to address this. Number three. You kidding me? The transportation secretary who's been on maternity leave with his gay lover? The guy who couldn't even stave off a supply chain crisis is going to answer why the Husk didn't shoot down the balloon. Sure, take it away. Number 31.
Once it became clear that this was not an accident, why did the U.S. not shoot it down then?
Well, again, the president gave instructions to have it handled, to have it shot down in a way that was safe. As you may have seen, there's reporting now that the debris field that was created by this balloon when it was shot down was about 7 miles long. And so anytime the military is considering an operation like that, they have to consider the safety of the American people. The president called for this to be dealt with in a way that balanced all of the different risks. That's exactly what happened. Military did a terrific job. From our perspective in the DOT, of course, our main concern is the safety of the national airspace. This thing was above where flight operations happen, and so any debris would have passed through that.
Sure, yeah, it's all about the debris. All right, that's
FAA
enough.
That's
enough.
I'm done with it. In this case,
that's enough.
Had to do ground stops on those airports.
Done with him. Now, here's what's interesting. CNN this morning. Spy balloon spotted near military bases. CNN has trotted out a map of all the military installations this balloon traveled near. Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, Scott Air Force Base in Illinois, Fort Bragg and Camp Lejeune in the Carolinas, all installations the balloon hovered near before they shot it down safely. Which Tapper asked Buttigieg about, number 30 here, just before that one. Take a listen.
The military gauged the different risks and the different benefits of different approaches, made the decisions that they did, brought this thing down without incident.
Right, but the presumption has got to be that the Chinese were able to gather intelligence hovering over the United States for day after day, especially over some of these sensitive sites.
I'm sure there's a similar presumption about what spy satellites do. That is well outside of my lane. I'm just glad that nobody was hurt as this thing came down.
Yeah, that's what everyone's mostly concerned about. That the debris didn't hit anybody or anything. Not that the entirety of our national security and defense is compromised. Everyone's very worried about the debris field. That'll be the word of the week this week. Debris field. That was a responsible thing for the Husk to do. Wait, because debris field. The watchword of the week is debris field. Whenever you hear debris field, kids, scream real loud. Take a shot every time you hear a Democrat say debris field this week. By the way, while Biden was out there talking about climate change this weekend, Biden came to Philadelphia for the Democrats' winter meetings and was talking about climate change. Now, what's fascinating about that choice of commentary, not to mention, I mean, there's a spy balloon issue happening simultaneously, but as he's talking about climate change, an epic ice storm leaves more than 37,000 without power in the South. And from the Washington Post over the weekend, it was so cold in New England that frost quakes and cracking trees were reported. The wind chill set a record in the United States, minus 109. Minus 109. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer joins us, president of the London Center for Policy Research. He's a New York Times best-selling author, CIA-trained intelligence operations officer, 35 years of experience in the field. And Tony, first of all, I'm grateful, sincerely, like you were the first guy I thought of during this whole Chinese spy balloon thing. I reached out this week and I said, we got to get Tony if he's free, so I'm grateful you are. Good morning.
Thank you. Well, good to be here.
Yeah, I got 1,000 questions. Let me first just start with the most obvious. A spy balloon is entering U.S. airspace over the Aleutian Islands. We clearly know it's there. I heard Jack Keane say it was traversing water for some time before it even got to the Aleutian Islands. You deal with it then, don't you? If you're going to deal with it at all? Is there any other way to see it?
Well, you do. Oh, of course. And by the way, just a real quick note on your introduction regarding the green issue. Yeah, I don't know if you know, I've got a degree in environmental studies, and just let me make a quick comment on that. Everything they're saying about climate is wrong. It's false. CO2 is a net benefit to the environment. It's a fraction of a percent of a fraction of a percent of it's a trace element in our atmosphere. We produce it. We need it. And just to let you know that we are on Leonard Nimoy was actually right in the 1970s. We are now on a net cooling phase of the planet.
Yes.
And in about 9,000 years, we're going to have glaciers moving down. Just saying, what they're doing and what they're saying has no relationship to the reality in which we live.
And it's going to get people
and
killed.
We have to be very cautious because it is because they're taking energy away from the U.S. economy, deadening that. They're giving advantage to the Chinese, which I'm going to talk. That's why I'm doing this right now. I'm trying to point out that so much of what we're doing right now benefits China. And who's building the green economy? The Chinese. They've got the corner on lithium, on cobalt. So everything we're doing benefits China, which circles back to the balloon. So, yes, the balloon was observed in the interior of China. That is to say that we have early warning that sees anything bigger than, say, I don't know, a breadbasket. I mean, something fairly small going up into the atmosphere. We have all sorts of surveillance gear because we are always on the lookout for anything that could be heading into our airspace. So something moving slowly like a balloon was easy. And to Jack's point, they knew this thing was going to traverse across into the United States when they first saw it coming up the Aleutian Islands. They knew the course. They knew the basic course within about 100 miles one way or another where it was going to go. So we could and should have, at that point in time, made a determination of what to do, especially since it was determined from day one, and I've talked to folks at the Pentagon about this, that was a collection platform, had nothing to do with weather. And I can't go into all the details on that at this point because some of them are pretty sensitive, but they knew exactly how that thing was operating because of some of the antenna. You can tell a lot about it, how something does something by antenna on it. They kind of figured it out pretty quick what was going on. And, yeah, they allowed it to come in. And the Canadians, too. The Canadians just kind of let it blow through the territorial airspace and land of Canada, too. And then when it hit the United States, I believe they wouldn't have told anybody until someone actually looked up and said, hey, there's a big balloon there. There shouldn't be there.
And this gets me to my next question, Tony. I had a caller earlier who was pretty highly agitated. He says that this START treaty with Russia is what sets the precedent for this, and that there's this notion out there, and the Pentagon, some leaker or source even suggested that, oh, yeah, this is pretty commonplace. This is business as usual. Balloons are constantly, they did it under Trump. Yeah, some people are trying to make this sound like this is kind of grist for the mill or something. Like, this happens all the time. This is just one we're paying attention to. What do you say?
No. Look, I was advising senior members of the administration. I've talked to Brigadier General Blaine Holt, who is a member of the Air Force. We were actually on talking about this on Newsmax on Saturday. He was also working at a very high level. I've talked to 3 other folks, and you've heard Mike Pompeo, the former SecDef, himself say that. When Mike was in, he actually said flat out that nothing like this happened. They've had Esper, former SecDef, say no. I was advising 4-star generals during that time. It did not happen.
Leon Panetta went on CNN and said it was problematic what's happened here.
No, I get. Trust me, stuff like this, the odd stuff, I always get called in on because it's all the bizarre stuff they want to talk about, and this would have been it. The other thing notable is that this happened. And by the way, you would have seen it. If something like this occurred, and listen to what they're saying. They make these claims, but they don't say it actually penetrated the U.S. territorial space. So they're very. All they're trying to do is muddy the water and say, well, it happened then too. It did not. It's a fiction, and you're going to have people come out and say this was nonsense. It never happened, and it didn't happen. What did happen, though, now on this president's watch, you've had this incursion. Marco Rubio talked about yesterday one of these coming down near Hawaii a few weeks ago, which I don't doubt because Hawaii has been something that's been on the Chinese radar and also North Koreans' radar to harass because they're kind of out there hanging out by themselves. So, yes, this is something that we have to take seriously. This was a tactical surprise. It should not have been a tactical surprise because we knew it was coming. And this was a political choice to allow it to go all the way to the interior of the United States. And no, it had never happened before. And the fact that they did let it happen speaks volumes to the weakness shown by Blinken, by Austin, and President Biden.
So let's talk about chain of command and orders given. So we know this thing is coming. We see it coming. One wonders, when do you think this president was told about it? He claims he ordered this thing shot down on Wednesday, to which he says that his military advisor said, hey, debris field, too dangerous, chief. Can't do it till it's safely out of airspace over the ocean. And he said he was fine with that. Do you buy that whole storyline?
No, I don't. No, and I'm pretty sure that they would have told him at some point about the time Biden says they did. Look, I know Mark Milley, and Mark at this point is a tower of jello, and I think he has become just completely feckless in this regard. And I think it's a political decision they made. I think it's more about, hey, we don't want to take this thing down somewhere that people can actually drive up and look at it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about a debris field because they could have taken it down the same way they did over the Atlantic. It was a pretty clean hit. By the way, the other fiction that you all need to be paying attention to, they kept saying, it's too hard to do. It wasn't. This thing is easy to do. Blaine Holt, I referenced Brigadier General Blaine Holt, a guy that flies airplanes for the Air Force, said, yeah, this is something we can commonly do. It's easy. And so they made all these excuses why they didn't take it down as soon as they could. They could have easily brought it down in Montana. Anywhere along the way, there would be no debris field. It was complete fiction from day one. So they wanted this, I think, for a photo op off the coast so they could make it look all dramatic. And it's ironic that the Babylon Bee of all news sources was the one that forecast what Biden would do by saying that Biden would shoot it down as soon as the Chinese balloon was done collecting intelligence, which sure enough is what they basically did.
Yeah, and so this kind of bizarre, some of this Biden sycophants were trying to put on this whole strategic, we scrambled the Chinese signal so they couldn't collect it, and we were actually surveilling their surveillance, and we learned a ton, and this was all part of a very strategic plan, and you're not buying any of that, are you? I'm certainly not, but you'd know.
Oh, look, if it was maneuvering, this is again, you need to look at the obvious, like, we're jamming it and we're taking all this intel. It's like, really? Well, why is it moving then? Why is it able to go up and down in altitude and still collect? So obviously, if it's moving under its own power, under direction, you're not jamming it. Just saying,
Yeah.
So again, and I was disappointed at Pat Ryder. I know Colonel Ryder, now General Ryder. some of the comments made were bordering on lying to the public. I would argue, these guys aren't supposed to lie to the public. It's in the law. But I'm telling you right now, some of the things that Pat Ryder said, other guys who were saying about this, were done in interest of promoting and protecting a political narrative, not the dangers. This whole, it's not dangerous. Look, an EMP device hung off that thing, a small aperture nuclear device, say the size of Hiroshima, set off over the Midwest, would take out about 8 or 9 states regarding electronics. So don't tell me this offered no threat. This is how insane their narrative is and dangerous to the ultimate protection of the nation. They knew this. They know it better than me. And yet they lied to the American public and promoted this as, no big deal anyway.
So we have a commander-in-chief that's supposed to give the State of the Union address tomorrow, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer. In a sane world, the commander-in-chief would explain this in thorough detail tomorrow night. What do you think we'll hear?
So he's going to make excuses and try to talk about how brave the Air Force was, which they were, to go up and take it down. It wasn't. I'm not diminishing the Air Force's work at all. As a matter of fact, I appreciate the fact we have the technology and training to do it. What he's going to try to do is dissuade everybody from looking further into this and say it's no big deal. It's a huge deal. This was a poke in the eye meant to show that the United States is completely feckless. This follows on to the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle. Right now, the Chinese are building up a narrative so that if they do something, they first off believe that they can get away with it, that they believe there'll be no substantive response, especially regarding Taiwan. But Biden will not address any of this. He'll try to put a happy face on it and essentially lie like he always does. As a matter of fact, I've seen some Republican members of Congress who just are going to show up because, they don't want to hear him lie anymore. And unfortunately, that's all we're going to hear him do is lie about what happened in this event and try to dissuade and diminish the importance of what happened to make it look like everything is normal and he's in charge. And I think it's a very dangerous thing, and I don't think he's going to say anything that people should believe. When
CNN is reporting this morning, I mean, this is CNN, mind you, they've got a map up today showing this balloon's track. Malmstrom Air Force Base, Whiteman Air Force Base, Scott Air Force Base, Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune. The balloon traveled near all of those until they shot it down. After,
right.
I mean, it's unthinkable, Tony. It's just it's unthinkable. It really is.
And they allowed this. They did. This was allowed. This was just fine. It's okay. No danger, and it's a lie. So,
yeah.
Again, we have to examine this thing from the objective truth, like you just said. This was a Chinese collection device that the Pentagon acknowledged early that this is not a weather balloon. It's not an accident, and yet somehow they lied to us, saying, "Oh, it's not being able to transmit." Yet it's maneuvering, so I guess you can't, if you're jamming it, it can't maneuver, but it is maneuvering, so I guess you're lying about that. And then they did go over all these locations. And I would argue that the Chinese probably can do as much good collection from satellites, but it doesn't change the fact, as I mentioned, this thing could have been a weapon. This could have been something that they decided to just kind of float over. And trust me, the Japanese did this during World War II. The Japanese actually used balloons. They floated in and actually had incendiary devices, which actually killed a couple of people in the Pacific Northwest. So this is the thing. This was a test. We failed it badly. And by the way, these things don't have to come on the territorial over air to actually do damage. I mean, if you have electronic EMP, electromagnetic pulse device, a nuclear device, which is done at the high altitude, which technically doesn't hit the continental United States, it's just energy. You could actually take out whole parts of our power grid, which would distract us greatly from being able to respond overseas. So I'm just saying, I'm not a neocon, but these things have to be taken seriously, and we have to establish a very strong posture in response. I don't think Biden's capable of that strong posture to push back on this.
Well, let me say this. Maybe this is too strong a point, but I'll make it. You tell me if I'm wrong. This is a bigger threat. This is more problematic to the American people than Russia's incursion into Ukraine. True or false?
Oh, by far. No, exactly. I'm no fan of Putin, But Putin does not want a direct confrontation with the United States. It's not in his interest, and to be honest with you. He's focused on what Russia wants, which is territorial integrity and essentially a set of buffer states around them, and they want to be able to basically take out of those buffer states like Ukraine, whatever they want, which in this case is gas and oil. That's what they want. That's what they're doing. They have no desire to undermine us to the level of stopping our status as a superpower. The Chinese are the exact opposite. They want dominion. They've actually said, Mark Milley told me this to my face. I actually was his guy on the transition team. The current chairman of the Joint Chiefs was the chief of staff of the Army. We met on this, and Mark lectured me for 30 minutes about how we, the United States, had to be concerned about China because he had spoken to their generals, he'd read their doctrine, and there was no doubt in his mind that the Chinese, the PRC, wanted to dominate the Pacific Rim and eventually all trade routes around the world. That's what Milley told me. That's what the guy in charge of the Pentagon told me to my face back in 2016, December 2016. Wow. So to me, it's very clear if you have people who are rational will recognize that yes, China is a much more significant threat. This specific event was meant to continue to degrade our standing, at least in the eyes of those who the Chinese will look to support them if they do something. And yeah, it is far greater, and people who are rational recognize that at this point. And the Ukraine thing is a distraction. We need to end it. We need to negotiate a settlement, which needs to be done sooner than later. And they're not doing it. So,
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer, true or false that Milley has been on record as saying that he would warn China about Trump if he felt concerned enough about Trump in the past? He said as much, has he not?
He did. So he, during the election, 2016 election, admitted to, and I think this is pretty well documented, called his Chinese counterpart to say that we're going to give you warning if something bad is about to happen. And that, to me, I said at the time, I say again now, if that could be proven, was treason. All you're doing is actually letting the Chinese know, oh, really? There's an opportunity here for us to misbehave, and we'll get away with it.
Is that what we're watching now?
And I think that was totally insane. Milley, right? And so it's just dangerous. And Milley should have resigned a number of times over Afghanistan, over that. There's a number of things that he should have resigned over, and he hasn't. And that tells me that maybe he's more compromised than we understand. Because again, I spoke to the man. He spoke to me face to face and acknowledged and lectured me on how dangerous the Chinese were. And now all of a sudden they're best buds. I don't know what to make of that, to be honest with you.
That is, I guess, my final question, because there are just a lot of us, and I happen to be one, that believe either he or they or, say the collective, I don't know, Biden, the money, Hunter, the laptop, the money taken. Is it the entirety of the administration? Is it the Defense Department? Is it Milley? Is it Biden? Are these people just in the pocket of China? Is that the way to read this?
I think the Chinese have made some very wise investments regarding bribery, blackmail, and other forms of chicanery. And do I believe that everybody's bought? No. I think they've been able to buy the Bidens. I think it's abundantly clear that Hunter was indeed enriching his father. That's impeachable, and I think that's something Republicans are going to be looking at. But other members like Milley, Feinstein, Swalwell, I was out tweeting about Eric the other day, and when I got my Twitter account back, I pointed out that I hoped that he would do something nice for his friend Fang Fang for Valentine's, maybe return the balloon or something, nice. But I'm just saying that the Chinese have over the decades made a wise series of investments so that they come across as a competitor, like Joe Biden has always said, they're just a competitor. A big China is good for the world. It's not. These folks are communists, and they're going to invoke and inflict their nationalism on the world. And I'm just telling you, I'm very libertarian. I'm very, let's not be aggressive about stuff. I'm telling you right now, and I actually debated Ron Paul when he ran for president on John Stossel's show. It's like, yeah, I'm not for the imperial United States, but I'm telling you right now, if we don't supervise and oversee the lines of communication, and allow for us to be the ones who manage free trade. You're not going to like the Chinese doing it because it's not going to be fair and it's not going to be equitable. So if we don't do it, nobody will. But the Chinese want to challenge us. So that's why it's so important to us to recognize the Chinese have indeed undermined our system of government. Oh, fentanyl. Fentanyl is a weapon of mass destruction. I saw an article yesterday where you have zombie cities now. That's all Chinese. That's Chinese doing. So we are essentially in a fifth-generation war with China. We just have to recognize they've bought our politicians. They found a vector to put a weapon of mass destruction into our culture and our society at the lowest possible level, and now they're challenging us militarily. It's time for us to wake up.
Yeah, and final question, I'll let you run on this, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer. If we flew a balloon over China and said, it's just a weather balloon, how would China respond?
Well, they wouldn't make it in. I mean, they're very aggressive. They're like a bunch of buzzing bees the moment you get close to any even international territory close to them. They would never have made it in. They would never made it in.
Yeah. And
they would have made a huge deal about our aggressive nature if something like that had happened. So, and by the way, they brought down P-3 airplanes. This is back in the 90s. I was part of that. By the way, that's one of the things I got called in on. Actually showed me pictures of this pilot who was actually going and putting like written signs up in his canopy to these P-3 guys. These things have been going on for a while before they bumped and took a P-3 down. So trust me, the Chinese would never stand for anything like that getting anywhere near their territory.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaffer, always the best, thorough analysis. Thank you so much for it today, sir. I appreciate you.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.